Picture this, you're in your jammies with a big bowl of your favorite cereal, and the new episode of the X-Men is about to come on. Your excitement overflows as the sugar and milk frolic across your taste buds, and the brightly colored superheroes dance across the screen. But have you ever considered how intersectional feminist ideologies incorporate themselves into this animated series marketed towards children? With the rise of second-wave feminism, the civil rights movement, Jewish solidarity, and the gay liberation front, the perception of superheroes shifted from white male nationalists whose abilities were a manifestation of their birthright or social status to social outcasts and misfits whose powers were imposed upon or burdened onto them, like the X-Men. Debuting in September of 1963, the X-Men have never shied away from representation. Whether it was portraying Jewish characters, disabled characters, women in leadership positions, characters of different nationalities, or otherwise. But have these portrayals always highlighted intersectional ideologies? Intersectionality refers to the interconnectivity of social categories, such as race, class, sexuality, and gender, as they apply to a specific individual or group, creating overlapping, intersecting, and interdependent systems of discrimination and disadvantage. It's a feminist legal and social theory coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in the late 1980s that analyzes how oppressive systems do not work independently, but interact to produce particularized forms of social oppression. But the question still stands. How does intersectionality relate to the X-Men universe? Well, by using the state of being mutant as a parallel to real-world discrimination against marginalized groups, the X-Men comics are able to incorporate intersectional feminist ideologies. Now grab your sugary cereal of choice, put on your pajamas, and get ready to see your favorite comic book characters in an entirely new light as I explain how the X-Men reflect feminist principles. Where else could we start but with the white-haired Kenyan goddess of weather herself, Aurora Monroe, aka Storm. Debuting in 1975 at the height of the second wave of feminism in America, Storm is one of the most iconic characters in the Marvel Universe and the first black woman superhero in Marvel comic history. As a mutant, Storm is part of a marginalized group, feared and oppressed by an imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal society due to their extraordinary abilities. However, her identity as a black woman further adds complexity to her experiences. The Combahee River Collective, a black feminist lesbian socialist organization of the 1970s, remarked that they, quote, often found it difficult to separate race from class from sex oppression because in their lives they are most often experienced simultaneously. As a black woman, Storm encounters systemic racism, discrimination, and bias simply because of the color of her skin. This racial inequality affects her access to resources, opportunities, and even her safety. Storm's gender also plays a significant role in her experiences of oppression. As a woman, she grapples with sexism and misogyny, which compound her oppressive experiences. Her positionality makes her particularly vulnerable to specific forms of discrimination, including misogynoir, the intersection of racism and sexism, which targets black women specifically. Storm is not just a mutant. She's a black female immigrant mutant whose various identities affect the kinds of power she's able to exercise in different settings. Storm's depictions over the years as a thief, punk rocker, witch, and queen have afforded the character the room to grow into and inhabit many different parts of herself, sometimes simultaneously, that aren't expressly related to her being a mutant. In the X-Men universe, mutants are perceived as a threat and often face prejudice and persecution from society. They are subjected to legislative inequity in the form of mutant registration acts, discrimination in employment, and are frequently targeted by hostile groups and governmental entities. Yet, despite the multiple layers of oppression she faces, Storm demonstrates immense strength and resilience. She becomes a symbol of intersectional resistance and empowerment, fighting for justice and equality and using her positionality as a black woman and mutant to inform her approach to activism within the X-Men and beyond. By understanding the intersections of race, class, and sex oppression that she navigates, we can appreciate the importance of her representation and how she inspires audiences to challenge the multiple forms of discrimination they may face. That examination of intersecting identities is why Storm is one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time, to say nothing of her status as an X-Man. Or X-Woman. No. Okay. Our next section of analysis will focus on the mutant shapeshifter with the ability to molecularly alter the formation of her biological cells at will, Raven Darkholme, aka Mystique. Very little is known about Mystique's past due to her shape-shifting powers, which allow her to be anyone she wants to be. There is no evidence known to the public or the government that Raven Darkholme ever looked like anything but a normal human being. In addition, no evidence has been presented to confirm that Mystique was even born female. Basically, Mystique is queer as fuck. No, but seriously, Mystique is super queer. Not only in appearances and backstory, but in her romantic ventures. She is known for having many lovers, but one of the most important is Destiny, whose real name is Irene Adler. For years, Mystique and Destiny were depicted as romantically involved. While other members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants were barely tolerated colleagues at best, Mystique cared deeply for Destiny, and the two women raised Rogue, a core member of the X-Men, as a family unit. Mystique's portrayal as a queer woman and mutant highlights the fluid nature of identity and the performativity of gender. Her striking blue skin is more than just an eye-catching hue. It's a symbol of otherness and the obstacles faced by those whose mere existence challenges cis-heteronormativity. Mystique is the incidental, the inessential, as opposed to the essential. Everyone else she is subordinate to, whether it's Magneto, Professor Xavier, or otherwise, is the subject, is the absolute, while she is the other. Continuing with the feminist theory motif, Judith Butler argues that gender is not an inherent trait, but rather a social construct that is constantly performed and reenacted. Similarly, Mystique's shape-shifting abilities allow her to embody various gender presentations, demonstrating the plasticity and constructedness of gender. As she engages in both heteronormative and same-sex relationships, she dismantles binary conceptions of sexuality. And by epitomizing different genders and engaging in non-normative relationships, Mystique offers a powerful critique of rigid cis-heteronormative ideals and invites audiences to question the limitations imposed by dominant discourses of gender and sexuality. Her character embodies the potential for subversion and intersectional resistance against patriarchal systems, aligning with the tenets of Butler's, Beauvoir's, and Crenshaw's feminist theories. Mystique's mutation is not just a superpower, it's her identity. By embracing her identity as a mutant, which is inherent and unchangeable, and as a queer woman, which is also inherent and unchangeable to her being, Mystique embodies the struggles faced by marginalized groups who are discriminated against by oppressive systems due to factors beyond their control. And as the ultimate performer of gender, Mystique challenges essentialist notions of gender by revealing its intrinsic performative nature. But I bet you're saying, Kevin, the good guys are all conventionally attractive and have desirable powers for the most part. If mutants really existed, pretty people with desirable powers like flight, super strength, and weather control would be loved, while only unattractive people with undesirable powers like Toad and Blob would be feared. To that I say,
wrong answer, forehead!
Now I must admit, the comics are based mostly around affluent white dudes who could assimilate into society if they really wanted to. However, the actual relative quote-unquote normalness of the X-Men is the point. People's hatred and intolerance of them is purposefully absurd in order to illustrate how illogical racism, classism, misogyny, and other forms of bigotry are. For a bit of real-world application, too many people believe that in the post-civil rights era, black people achieved full equality and racism was magically solved. It's the biggest lie white supremacy continues to push onto the world, allowing more subtle types of oppression and bigotry to foster. Bell Hooks says it best, quote, "A central tenet of modern feminist thought has been the assertion that all women are oppressed. This assertion implies that women share a common lot, that factors like race, class, religion, sexual preference, etc., do not create a diversity of experience that determines the extent to which sexism will be an oppressive force in the lives of individual women." So if you're looking for a reason for how Marvel can continue to justify the minority allegory for people who are obviously heroes, just look at how our society has managed to never come to terms with our own racism, misogyny, classism, and homophobia. I'm sure this is a common phrase in the X-Men universe. Oh, they single-handedly saved us from the giant fire-breathing atomic bomb mutant? That's nice. Claps for them, I guess. And then those same people will continue to believe that humans will eventually be replaced by mutants a la the Great Replacement Theory. And here's the real kicker. There's still plenty of allegory ripe for the picking regarding the X-Men. Incarceration rates, sentencing discrimination, housing discrimination, texturism, fat phobia, marriage equality, religious freedom, voting rights, immigration, the list goes on forever and ever. But we must remember, as Patricia Hill Collins stated, intersectionality is not just the study of multiple systems of oppression, but also the acknowledgement of the multiple identities of individuals and how they intersect. So, by exploring how positionality and mutanthood intersect in the X-Men universe, it's possible to examine how these identities shape the opportunities and limits for characters within the series. All in all, the X-Men universe provides a unique opportunity to explore the intersection of gender, race, class, sexuality, and mutanthood, developing how these identities determine experiences of oppression and discrimination. By applying ideas from Patricia Hill Collins, the Combahee River Collective, Kimberly Crenshaw, Judith Butler, Simone de Beauvoir, and Bell Hooks to the series, it's possible to understand the complexities of intersectionality and the importance of acknowledging differences among marginalized groups. Hopefully, in the future, the X-Men will continue to tackle these stories head-on in crystal clear terms. Digging into these kind of narratives won't detract from the fact that X-Men are mutants, but rather would emphasize that mutants, like all people, are multidimensional beings worthy of respect and acceptance. Thank you.